Well, welcome. Today is rally number 3. This is June rally with Pride Month. We're celebrating everything has to do with Pride, and I'm here with Femily. Hello, darling. How are you today?
Hi, happy Pride, everyone. So nice to be here. I'm a huge fan of all the things you do, the podcast, the rallies, all the things. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. And you were also a guest in my podcast, and that's one of my favorite episodes for sure. And I love what you do, and I would really love it if you could introduce yourself because nobody else is better than that to just tell people what it is that you do, who you are, where you come from.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I think it's always so stilted when someone introduces you by reading off a sheet. So I love introducing myself. My name is Femily. I use any pronouns except for he, him. Those I don't really relate to those. So mostly she, her, like you would probably assume, or they, them is fine if we're using those pronouns. My day job is that I help Silicon Valley, the tech world, get better on gender and orientation. So be less sexist and less homophobic culturally, and also so that women and queer and trans people can move up at the same pace as their colleagues in tech, so that everybody can rock a meaningful tech career, because the future of lots of this world is tech. And so that is fun for me. I also live in California, in San Francisco. And so that's my day job. My passion job is that I run programs that pique my interest. Whenever I realize there's something that I'm interested in that other people are always asking me about, then I run stuff for them. So I have a program on, it's like a quick program on feminism on Instagram, how to bring your authentic, like bold activist self out on Instagram. I have another one called From a New One, where I got together 8 of my friends who are bisexual women. And so we are all just talking about our journeys. And this one's called From Bi Curious to Bi Confident. And so it helps people go on the journey and learn things without having to do it themselves, because it's a lot to learn about from scratch at any age, and especially if you're a busy person. And if you're a busy person living in a country like most of us do that don't think it's a great pursuit for women to care about sexuality, right? If there's shame around that. And then I run the third program that I run is my big program called Future Thought Leader. And I help feminists and queer people step into the spotlight a little bit more and get covered in the media a little bit more, and really make an impact in their communities and around the world. In terms of this Happy Pride issue, I identify in terms of all the letters LGBTQAI+. I identify with the Q for queer. And for me, that means everything except for 100% straight. And then more specifically, in terms of the LBGT, the original 4, I guess, I identify as the B, as bisexual, meaning that for me, that means I have had love and crushes and relationships with all the different genders. And that doesn't mean that if you're listening and you haven't had that as your history or don't want that as your future, that doesn't mean that you can't be bi. There are plenty of people who only have romantic feelings and like life partner feelings for one of the genders, whereas they want to like make out with all the genders. And that's also just as bi as someone who's like open to marrying any of the genders, for example. Let's see, I'm married to a dude who I met when I was 38. I'm 40, almost 43 now. And we don't do 100% monogamy, I would say. We can talk about that a little bit more. We don't have kids. I don't have kids. I definitely don't have kids. Welcome to this podcast. But we definitely don't have kids together. He has 2 older teenagers from a previous marriage. And when I met him, I was very clear, like, I don't want to create any babies. And I don't want to be anyone's stepmom. And so luckily those children have him, which one parent is great. They also have a mom, and they also have a different step parent from the mom's family. So they have plenty of grownups trying to mind their business. And so I'm just not a stepmom. As I said to them, like, I'm totally in your family. I said this to the kids. and I'm totally on your team. You don't need another parent, and I've never wanted a kid. So let's just be in this family together like that. And they were like, okay, like their teenagers like, okay. Like, I don't know how much it sunk in, but they definitely don't call me their stepmom or ask me like, can I do this or blah, blah, blah. I know that today we're going to talk about like everything you ever wanted to know about Pride topics. So I tried to take what people usually ask me, and I'm just going to hit on those, and whatever questions we have like after this, we can get into those. So people are always asking me, straight people are always asking me like, when did you know, or when did you think you might be bi? And I like to flip that. It's a little bit sassy, but I like to flip that on its head and ask straight people like, when did you know for sure that you weren't any of those letters? You're not like even 1% L, 1% B, 1% G, 1% T. Like, when did you rule out, there's a lot of letters you could have found your home in. Like, when did you know you weren't even 1% any of those letters? And then it's just, I'm trying to expose the fact that we just assume everyone is 100% straight, and really 100% the gender that their doctor said, oh, this is a baby girl or whatever, what from birth. And then anything different is like against the norm, right? I agree it's a social norm, like everyone's pushing that hardcore, but I don't, like when we look at science and research, it's not the way that the world works, right? So let's see, what else can I tell you? My truth is that I have always had crushes on like confident, smart people of every gender. When I was younger, I didn't really know they were crushes. I thought I just admired other girls or like wanted to be them. And it was hard to, you know, at like in like fourth grade, I wasn't really like a sexual person. So I just was like admiring lots of different people. And like, there wasn't a way to like figure it out. Until older, you know, the age that most of us like come alive into, like, we don't just have emotions and like physicality, but we have like a sensuality and a sexuality and like real crushes. And at that point, I started to feel like, oh, I think like I can tell the difference between boys that I don't have a crush on and that I do have a crush on. Like there's a certain zest I get for that one that I have a crush on. I started realizing I had that certain zest for like girls in my class, right? Or girls at my summer camp or at my job. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I had a high school boyfriend who did give me that zesty feeling. And he was like, hey, one day he says to me, he's like, this is kind of my coming out story. He was like, hey, you know, so-and-so, did you know they're bisexual? And I like hadn't heard that word before. I'm from a very small town. And so I hadn't heard this word before. And this was like mid 90s. And he was like, you know this girl? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I think she's bisexual. Did you know that? And I was like, yeah. Cause I was like a teenager and not like saying that I didn't know stuff. And then he was like, I think you're bisexual too. Like you seem like you would like girls and boys. And I was like, oh, for sure. Like that just felt like the truest thing. And I was like, if he sees it, not like if your boyfriend thinks it about you, it's definitely true. But like, he was the first person I'd been like really sexual with and like talked about life and partners and all that with. And so I was like, it just fit, like it fit like a truth. And then I remember being like, I want to stop hanging out with him at this pizza parlor and go like try to Google on the limited Google they had in 1995. Like, what is that word? Like, tell me more. I understand it a little, but like, I know there's gotta be more out there. So that was that. And I remember luckily that happened before I started my college search. And so then I was like, oh shit, if I haven't heard that word yet in this town, I got to go to a place where they are talking bigger things and like where there's more understanding of humans and sexuality and women, etc. And so I started looking for, I eventually wound up at a women's college, which is the perfect place to figure out if you're gay or not. And so I actually at the women's college thought, I would say I had a long-term girlfriend there who was pretty biphobic. Like she made me promise her every day I'd never be with a man again. And I was like, well, I mean, okay, if that makes you happy, like I would never like a man again. And she was like, well, how can you predict the future? I'm like, yeah, exactly. Why are you asking me to do that? Like, it was not a good, not a supportive sitch. And obviously, eventually we broke up. There were many problems, including that. And I have pretty regularly since then dated all the genders. I sometimes go on a spree of one or the other, you know, of men or women. Obviously, there's a whole spectrum of other genders, like, you know, butch lesbians are not another gender, but they're like a whole nother type, right? And I realized in college, I was like, oh, I like butch lesbians. This is great. Like a whole nother type of person I had not really encountered in my small town. This is great. Let's see. I think when people are figuring out, I'm trying to think about your audience, like when people are trying to figure out, do I like women? It's hard. I think a lot of people overcomplicate it. We already know when there are men in our lives who we're like, that is just a friend. He's a gem, but he is just a friend. Like, we know that that's not a person we're having a crush on. The same feeling will come up for you as when you have a crush on a dude and you're like, I know I have a crush on that dude. Except when you're a woman in a patriarchal society that shames women about sexuality, and that is like, if you have homophobia in your country, like we all do, I would assume, having a crush on a woman does come with a little bit of like self-doubt or, you know, self-denial sometimes. So it may feel the same in terms of zesty, but then there's like all this other stuff on top of it. Bisexual women often come into their identities a lot later in life. So just because you didn't know it when you were 12 or 30 doesn't mean you can't know it when you're 50. And also sexuality evolves and changes. That's what the research is showing now. So like, even if you were 100% straight when you were 18, you might be 100% gay when you're 42. Like if you're open to where you're going, right? There are different seasons of life for different things, different types of friends. You've probably been like, I need this kind of friend in my 20s. I'm really drawn to this kind of friend. And like, now I'm drawn to this bit kind of friend. Like, sexuality will ebb and flow if you let it, even if you only like one gender. Like, you might have liked one gender who's like the real sensitive kind of that gender. And now you might be like, I'm actually a little bit more into the like go-getter ambitious type of this gender. Like, so, you know, sexuality, we know that it grows and changes.
You know, it's interesting. Sorry to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
You know, because there's this thing about, you know, people just kind of like need to label, right? I need to be like set on their way. So you're either gay or lesbian. Yeah. And there's this thing I've heard, like I said, I don't know much about this, but yeah, that there is like sort of like a lot of rejection towards people who are bisexual in the LGBTQI community, because it's like, you haven't made up your mind. Like, you're not a lesbian, you're not straight. What are you?
Yeah.
So could you comment a little bit more on that? Because I think that's interesting to like explore.
It's interesting because there's both the straight community and the LGBTQAI community. They're always worried that the bisexuals are really a secret one from the other community, or like, we're going to ditch them for the other community. So I think there's that. But I mean, I'm 100% sure that I don't want to lock down my potential and my sexual energy to just one gender. So that's where I'm very sure. But yeah, within any community, there are rankings of who counts more, or rightly so, who's more marginalized, right? Within the LGBTQAI community, right? Like, trans folks of color and trans kids are most under siege. And so I'm not trying to put like married white US bisexual women's agenda ahead of, trans kids of color, for example. I'm just trying to say I'm in the community, and I'm also an ally for the other letters within the community that are, especially those that are more marginalized. Yeah, it's true. I think that's when you hit on one of the biggest myths, Isabel, about, or one of the biggest thorns in the side, and one of the biggest things that causes women who are living straight lives to not want to claim the bi label, because it does come often from their straight friends and their straight communities with a lot of flack. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, make up your mind in a way. And
Yeah.
when you talk about like the fluidity of sexuality,
Yeah.
to me it makes sense in the same way that it makes sense that there are some times in my life when I'm attracted to a certain type of dude, and then maybe there are some things about that dude that I don't like. Maybe a year after that, I'm not so much attracted about certain of the things that I was attracted a year ago, and and I understand how you can, like, in a way, let yourself go, but how scary is that for people who live in a world that is so freaking homophobic?
I know.
So what do you think would be, I mean, say somebody's like trying to figure out that they're they're not necessarily 100% straight, there's something they want to explore. How can they explore as a grown woman that bisexuality?
Okay, I mean, that's a perfect way. The first thing is take off any pressure that you ever have to have a label. Labels are for other people. You don't need a label. Like, you don't have a label of what kinds of friends you're seeking. You don't have a label for lots of things that are important to you. And so you don't need a label, right? There are a lot of women who are broadly, when I look at like either what kinds of crushes I've seen them have or what kinds of crushes they are hoping to have or whatever, that we would label like, generally bisexual, but who do not label. They're just like, I'm me. Yeah, sometimes I make out with a woman, or sometimes on Bumble or Tinder or any of those apps, like sometimes I slide it to the all genders. Let's just see who's in here, right? I'm just more open than 100% sure I'm 100% straight. So for exploring as a grown up, a grown woman, there's a couple of things. Like if you're already in a relationship, and then if you're a singleton, right? So if you're already in a relationship, ideally you can explore with your husband, or I mean, boyfriend or whatever it is. Like, and exploring, when I say exploring, it can be many different levels. Like, sure, when I say explore with your boyfriend, you're probably thinking a threesome. That's great. I love a threesome, but maybe your boyfriend doesn't, or maybe you don't, or maybe that's like way too much of a step. Smaller steps are like just talking about your desires or your history or your I kissed a girl and liked it stories with your boyfriend or husband, or with your friends, right? Or with a therapist, or, just anyone who you think would be like a really listening ear. If it's still in the stage where you're trying to explore, but you're like, I don't want to talk to the people in my life, more power to you. You could explore as a grown-up on your own by like watching queer movies, watching queer things on Netflix, reading books that have queer or bi characters in them. Like joining groups where it's more open-minded. I'm in a group called Skirt Club, which has 15,000 members, and it's all straight identified and or bi-curious women. And also I'm not curious. I'm more totally bisexual. So also a few of us are in there, like, for sure. It's called Skirt Club. They have global parties all over the globe, and it's a beautiful scene for exploring because they have a book club and it meets on Zoom. So there's like no dating pressure. There's just like, you're getting to know other women who happen to sometimes enjoy the company of other women to one degree or to the total degree of sex with women, for example. If you're single, and or if you're in a relationship with someone who lets you go and gives you a hall pass, like a little permission slip to go on dates, or where you're open, polyamorous or whatever, online dating is a good place to start. The first step is just sort of swiping and looking and seeing what it feels like to you. Like, does it make you feel like I would like to meet that person? Does it make you feel like mostly you're swiping no on all the people, which also is fine. And then maybe there's one, like a diamond in the rough in there, and you're like, ooh, she kind of piques my interest. And you never have to actually pursue it. It can be just like seeing a lot of exploring. That's not like, here we are, two naked people in a bed, go. Right? Like that can be a lot. There's so much more explorations. Like, think about the kind of explorations you did when you were like 11, right? You were like, I'm going to read this comic called Betty and Veronica, and like, oh, it kind of titillates me to think that they might be a couple. Like, that's it. You know, it's not much more than that.
I have
Yes.
never thought about Barry and Veronica being a couple. That
I only thought about that.
that idea just went, I was like, yeah, I could see it happening now that you mentioned.
Yes. Oh my gosh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's very interesting because I think many women, might be sort of like, I want to do it, I want to like explore, but I don't
Yeah.
know how, and I'm a little bit
Yeah.
scared. And there's one thing about the most of the LGBTQI people that I know from this community, and it is that the judgment is not really about your sexuality. Like you can be judged on your appearance,
Yeah.
on how you speak, how you look, but it's not about who you love or who you want to have sex with.
Mhm.
Which it's liberating in the sense that in most, or not most, but many straight communities, you will be judged if you
Yes.
are like, oh, I want to kiss a girl, or oh, I want to explore this with a woman.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for sure. And how about like coming out? How do you feel about, because I know there's some people who are like just kind of like, oh, I actually had an interview not long ago with their two sisters, twins,
Oh,
child-free, and they're both gay.
oh my
And
God.
that,
Ah, I love
that
it.
was the last episode I had in the On a Supper. And one of them said that when she realized that she was gay, she just came out like, cut her hair, and she was like, I'm so gay. She wanted everyone to know that she was gay. And like,
Yeah.
but there are
Yeah.
people who are not that open. So,
Yeah.
how this pressure of coming out, how do you feel people could handle it? Or maybe is it necessary to come out?
So I have a bunch of thoughts on this. First of all, I'll gear it mostly towards, older women, like women who are not teenagers and children, and also the bisexual identity, but a couple caveats. There's a lot of pressure into the coming out story that comes from a male centered society. So gay men, by and large, know that they don't like girls and that they do like boys by the time they're 4 to 7. They're like pretty damn sure. Women, even lesbians, even like the most tomboyish lesbian who grows up to be a butch lesbian, they know that they want to be a tomboy and that their gender is more like tomboy, but it doesn't like solidify their sexual identity until much later, like at least teenage years. For most, these are just averages. Bisexual women, like it could be like a lot of women, it's into their 30s, like as the average, meaning half are younger, half are older, right? So coming out story, like so many things in our patriarchal society, are based on the man's experience. And so someone who knew when they were 4 to 7, by the time they're 15, 16, 17, they've known for 10 years. Like then they're like, I'm sure of it and I'm coming out to you, right? Also, our society, while there's so much homophobia, if anyone is going to be appreciated within the LGBTQAI group, it's gay men, especially white gay men, but gay men, like even the most conservative women are like, I love my hairstylist and he's gay and it's fine. But then they're like, so anyways, the coming out story is built for them. And it's also not safe for teenagers who are like, I'm only a real and valuable human if I come out as a teenager, because a lot of teenagers get kicked out of their houses. And a lot of teenagers get disowned. A lot of teenagers face a lot of shame from their parents. So my whole thing when I used to work on a queer youth hotline. I would be like, don't come out unless you're 100% sure your family is going to accept you. Don't come out until you're on your own and you pay your own bills and you are totally set. Like the reason people were pushing coming out so hardcore in the 80s, 90s, whatever, is it's true. Once a homophobic person meets a loved one, their sister, their beloved boss or mentor, who they then hear is queer or trans, it does soften the heart of the homophobic person to be like, I thought all queer people were like that, but my amazing mentor is queer. Maybe now I shouldn't hate gay people so much, right? That's the purpose of coming out, is to help homophobic people not be so homophobic. But you can't put like, you can't change the whole world with your one coming out story. So if you're not safe to do it, and if it doesn't feel like the song in your heart, there's plenty of ways to not come out, but still support the community with money, financial donations, right? With standing up for queer people when they're not in the room, right? You don't have to say I'm queer, but you can just say, like, next time you hear a homophobic joke, you can say, like, come on now, it's 2021. Like, that's not cool. Like, you're so retro for having that opinion or whatever. For coming out for us, like for me and my peers, I obviously, as a bisexual woman with a husband and as someone who pretty much looks straight in terms of the stereotypes of who looks gay or not, I have to come out all the time. There's no one, I was laughing at telling you my coming out story to my boyfriend in high school, but like, that's just the first time I mentioned it. When I meet a new friend now, when I meet a new client, when I meet a neighbor in this new neighborhood that I just moved to, it's always a thing that's there of like, am I going to come out to them? So I have to come out all the time. And I do make decisions. Like my first date with my husband, I told him, I was like, I date all the genders, just so you know. You're a man today, but you don't know what gender it could be tomorrow. And he's like, okay, great. And I was like, do you have any queer family members? And he told me about a couple. And like, I was like, have you always voted in favor of our rights? And then he was like, yes. And I worked for Clinton. Anyways, he told me the things. He passed my bar. So I was coming out to him. I come out when it's an important person, but I honestly do get still scared, I guess, coming out to women who I want to be friends with, because I'm afraid it's going to forever change our dynamic, and that it's going to bring this idea in that women, we always have when we're in friendship with a man, which is like, we're friends, but you're going to obviously hit on me at some point and it's going to suck. Like, you know, that I don't want to bring that horrible dynamic into a friendship with a cool woman that I'm just friends with. Right. So I still get weird, but then I'm also a creep if I don't mention it, like, because then I am queer and they don't know it. How are we supposed to be friends if this is such a huge part of my life and I don't mention it? Anyways, it's a whole thing.
You know, you just reminded me, I have several friends who are part of the LGBTQI plus community.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this today, actually. I remember the first time I actually met a gay person from my generation, I was already in college. Like for me, high school was just like this bubble, and being gay wasn't cool. So, but one of the things that I've heard a lot of my friends who are either women, who are either gay, I mean, lesbian or bisexual, is that when they come out, especially the ones who are bisexual, when they come out to a male, when they're dating or friends or whatever, they immediately become like an object. There's this objectification of, oh, you must be like into threesomes and this, and tell me about the way you like kiss girls, like, and it's just like, they're like, it's so fucking disgusting. Like you don't even know. I mean, it's a good filter in the end, because you come out and you're like, I don't want to hang out with this dude anymore.
Yes. No, for sure. I mean, I was definitely using it as a filter. Like I didn't want to waste time and then tell someone on date number 9 and then they were weird after I spent all my time putting on my eyelashes. Like, no way. I need to know up front, you know, and I guess that's a case for telling women friends too, like straight women who I'm trying to be friends with, like telling them early so that if they are weird, then we don't need to be friends, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and you also reminded me, so you know who Layla Martin is?
Yes.
Okay, so she's, for people who are watching this and don't know who Layla Martin is, she's like this big like women sexual empowerment coach. She's huge. She's this sex goddess thing, and she has all these videos, and she has all these courses. Like I've known about her work. I don't know her personally, about her work for like maybe 4 years now. Which it does wonders to your well, for me it did wonders for my own like my own love, like self-love, I don't even know how to say this. Yeah, my own self-love. Anyway, maybe, so she has a husband or boyfriend, I don't know, and they love each other, and he's always like in the pictures, and like he does a lot of videos with her as well. He's super hot. And one day, maybe it was a year ago or something, she came out as bisexual. And she lost a lot of clients because of that. Yeah, I know. Being like a sexual coach and like expressing her sexuality lost her clients. So
She
what
was
do you think?
already, and it's not like she was a mathematician and then she came out as bi and they were like, goodbye. She was already in the world of sexuality coaching and sex coaching and women and femininity and goddess and all that stuff. I am dying to know what's your sense? Like, who were these women that were into all that, but they just couldn't hang with the bisexual part?
I think, this is interesting because I thought about, how we are taught in this patriarchal world to use our sensuality and our sexuality since very young to get our way with men, because men are powerful and they have the money and they have all the resources, and we need to use our, sensuality and be cute and and what God gave us and this body and the titty and everything to get men to do our bidding, basically. It's a strange thing because it kind of sounds like a little bit like prostitution to me, but anyway, right. So I think maybe some women are like, I just want to be like get old sexual, but I don't think they're doing it to get in touch with themselves, which is what Layla actually like promotes, right? We're going to do this course, we're going to do all of this so you can actually feel a lot more sure, like secure in your, like better in your skin, and you're going to love yourself more, and you're going to be all this sex bomb, and it's going to be all for you. And then however that expresses itself in different areas of your life, that's a whole different story, right? It's about you. But if women come into this thinking, oh, I'm going to become a sex goddess because I want to seduce my boss, or I want to seduce my husband, or I want to get this guy you know what I mean? Like, and they are following all the patriarchal things, and they're homophobic. Of course they are homophobic. If you don't want to work with somebody who's a fucking sex goddess, but because just based on the fact that she's bisexual.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's a stunner to me. I mean, the way that people feel about sexuality is so complex. And I mean, I am surprised because I would have thought people who were trying so hard to be so open about their sexuality would have been into it. But I guess there must be a segment of her audience who only wanted it for heterosexual purposes. And now they can't trust what she's offering because of that. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, as a business leader myself, I'm very out both about my own sexuality and also about my audience. For example, like it says right here, the program for feminists and queer people. And so that's two things, right? It's like being honest about me as a queer woman in America, and also being open that I am serving the queer community and also feminists, right? It doesn't say women. It's like even more like a notch up, right? So with that, I have seen time and time again, both as myself marketing this course and as the 87 people have gone through this course, the more you niche down into a super niche that's your truth and that you're really passionate about serving, the more you'll find all your people. Like there's a way in which some old school marketing people might have even told you, Isabel, like, well, don't do child free. Like, because what if you're ruling out independent women who have children? Like, why don't you just say independent women? And then why say women? Just say independent people. Like, and then who's going to your stuff? No one. Like your child-free thing is genius because it gets to the heart of your passion and an audience who's also underserved and undernamed out there. So similarly, Layla, as I've heard, like lost people in coming out, but what she's also going to gain is people like me who, yeah, I knew of her, but I never would have taken a class from a straight woman before about sexuality and stuff because I would be like, you're never going to get me. But now that I know that she's in the queer family and that she just came out as bi, I'm now like, I gotta go. I'm looking her up after this and I'm gonna go sign up for stuff. So she did immediately impact her client base, but she's gonna gain so many more people and way more devoted people to the actual truth of her.
Absolutely agree. And I think that's a really valuable, I mean, I love what you just said, because I think there's a lot of people who are also afraid to come out because they're afraid to lose clients, and not only come out as part of the LGBTQI community, but also like come out as child free, for example,
Yes.
because they're
Right.
scared to lose friends,
Yeah.
clients, a business, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, just to be in their truth. And it's so important to kind of like align your truth with whatever it is that you're putting out in the world,
Yep.
because that makes it a lot more genuine, right? A lot more,
Yeah.
direct. And
Yeah, like when you're telling me about this, it's reminding me, when you do come out about child free, when you've been living in a world that assumes no one's child free, everyone's heading towards children, or assumes everyone's straight, coming out about those things, you probably do lose some of the people who were invested in you becoming a child having forever straight person, right? But so that's hard. And it's like the dip that Layla experienced in her clients. So one thing you can do right now, as you are exploring coming out about being child free, if you want to come out about it, or about exploring bi-ness or bi-curious or whatever, start making some new friends through Bumble or book clubs or organizations that you know that are aligned, that are more aligned with the you that's your truth, whether or not you come out in the future. But it is an insulation against when you do lose those more old-fashioned friends, or the friends that had different expectations for your future. You will also have these newer friends who see the truth about you as you're going forward. And so I'm not talking about shed all your old ones, pick up all new ones, but just try to integrate a couple new friends who see the future you truth. And this is true if you're like, you suddenly want to go get your MBA, you're going to want a friend or two from the MBA world, as opposed to just your friends before from whatever life it was before. Like, we're growing. We need friends in the future too.
absolutely. And now that we're in the topic, this is something that I got questions about this, and I don't even really know how to answer this. Being child free in the LGBTQI community, is it a lot more open? Like, people are, they don't care much about that idea? Because I know you told me in our podcast episode about the lesbian baby boom. So I would like to know a little bit more about being child free in the queer community.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is, there's not one monolithic, I mean, you know this, I'm just saying this for all the viewers, like, there's not one monolithic LGBT community. Just like earlier when I've been referencing the straight community, like, what is this straight community? I'm really just talking about like there's not one thing that links everyone. So we're really talking about the sort of norms that make up those worlds. So for me, as someone who never wanted children and was solidly in the queer community, had all my mentors of grown-ups and couples were in the queer community. Some had kids, some didn't, but you're starting with a blank sheet of paper in the queer community, which is, are you going to do monogamy or not? You have those conversations at the beginning of a queer relationship and throughout it. Whereas in a straight relationship, it's assumed, like, if you like each other, you're monogamous. And then it's also frankly assumed you're going to have children together. Like, if you don't talk about it, you're going to be popping out babies. Like, you have to go very against the grain, as you listeners definitely know. And so similarly, in a queer relationship, you talk about, do you think kids would be a thing that we would want to have, as opposed to starting from the default of, definitely having kids like happens in the straight world. The one caveat, and you referenced this before, Isabel, is now that gay marriage has been here for quite a while in the US, and now that there are many different ways to create a family with adoption and lots of medical ways, et cetera. there is a lesbian baby boom or a queer baby boom that has put a spotlight on lesbian or anyone queer in a queer relationship. Like it's put a little bit more pressure on, or a little bit more, and a little bit more pressure on. And also it's told people's parents, like, look, just because you have a queer kid doesn't mean they're not going to have kids. When I first came out to my mom, her response was, oh no, does that mean I'm not going to have grandchildren? And I was like, those are unrelated. Like, but I understood how she thought that because she didn't know any lesbians with kids. That wasn't a lot. There weren't shows about it. There weren't people in her neighborhood who were lesbians with kids. Now, for a lot of Americans, they've seen shows or movies or neighbors who are lesbians with kids. And so it's now grandparents will be giving that pressure to their children of all orientations, but within the relationship, there won't be that pressure. There won't be as much pressure as there is in the straight community.
And I hadn't thought about it in that sense. And it is quite striking, to think that you go into a straight relationship with that sort of like, it's a given.
Yeah.
And when you go into a queer relationship, it's like, okay, let's talk about this. Like, because of course, normally wouldn't come up just biologically, naturally, and
right.
Yeah. So I think that's quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's another thing that I wanted to ask you, and it's more about how, because I know this is a big part of your work.
Yeah.
And something that you're extremely passionate about. How can people connect, and not only connect, but also support the LGBTQI plus community more?
Yeah, I think the main thing, so for those listeners out there, like regardless of if you're bi-curious or queer or straight, making it known that you are an ally of all the places on the spectrum, like for the trans folks in your community and in your place in the world, for people, for gay men who are flamboyant. Like there's a lot of picking and choosing that people do about like, I like this kind of gay, but nah, this kind of trans person, like, so the more you can be a voice for all of the different places on the queer and trans spectrum when we're not in the room, and especially when we are in the room. So if I'm sitting there at my Thanksgiving table, I'm trying to think, I'm the only person who's any of those letters, who's told me that, or told anyone that there are any of those letters in the queer and trans umbrella at my Thanksgiving table. And so if someone says something cringy, like they don't mean to be hateful, but they just like say a weird sort of transphobic joke, or they like make fun of RuPaul or something, I can be the one that says, come on, Alex. I mean, they know it's wrong, so you often just have to say their name, right? Come on. Then it's fine for me to be the one that does it, but it's so touching if someone else in my family says, come on, none of us want to hear that, right? And that's such a cool ally move to do it in front of me. Another thing is, as you're thinking about philanthropy, we all get in a rut of giving money or time or volunteerism to organizations that are more similar to us, right? And so if you can think through as you're thinking about your dollars and your time, especially the queer youth. I mean, the youth really need the help these days, especially the trans youth. And so anything you can do to support trans youth, and also calling your politicians to tell them your point of view as a, you can say, as a straight person, I'm calling on because I really think blah, 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 or you don't even have to identify your orientation as you call.
That's awesome. I just want to say, for the record, that if anyone makes fun of RuPaul in front of me, I would totally just punch him in the face. I was just like, don't mess with RuPaul.
I agree.
Yeah, he's everything. Right, Lenora, do you have any questions for Femily? Anything you'd like to ask her? Or
okay, I've got like 37 pages. No. I'll keep it to 2. Why is my mic so loud? I turned it down. Okay, is that better? All right. So I feel very similar to you. I am queer. B is also my letter. I don't like using that label though, because there's so many questions, so many assumptions, and a lot of pressure to explain and even explore. And when you were talking, I had all these flashbacks of when I was 8 in grade 3, feeling sexual for the first time and realizing I was fantasizing about other girls. And I knew around 10, but I grew up in a cult, so I did not know like sexuality was repressed body image. I mean, you can imagine. So like, I didn't sleep with a man until I was 26. But I had, my first online looking at porn, having an online affair was with a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, she was, I don't know if it was, I mean, this was like mid 90s. So God knows who it actually was, but she presented herself as an Asian woman named Jenny. Very cute and so she sent me lesbian porn and I was like, yes. So at 38 now, I think, and I've only been in one public relationship with a guy. Everything else has been a quiet affair. Mm-hmm. My struggle where I'm currently at, it's not like I know very much how I feel. Straight passing relationships, that's something where I struggle in because, I'm not sure that marriage will ever be my thing because again, growing up how I did, seeing my parents who had a very strong marriage, I can't get past my head of like the bar for marriage is so high. So I'm like, well, romantically, I'm attracted to men. Sexually, I'm more attracted to women. And thanks to Isabel, who I think maybe, did you get that graphic you sent me from Femily? Because it really okay, because I saw something, because I've always been confused. That's been my struggle, which is why I've kind of avoided relationships. It's like, I love the energy of men because I have a lot of that energy and I love spending time with them. I don't do well dating women, but I love sleeping with them. So how do I reconcile having a relationship where all of my needs are met without denying anything, but I can't commit to somebody? And so, I've been meeting a lot of bi women who are married to men, and I'm like, how do you do it? Because to me, where I'm at in my journey is if I do get married or have a relationship, because there are opportunities are coming for that, and I'm trying to move past. How do I not deny how I feel without saying, yes, we're going to do threesomes all the time? Because I freaking hate that assumption. Like, I mean, that's like right out the gate. I'm like, look, I'm super picky about my women. Don't you dare think for a second you can bring somebody home and say, we're going to sleep together. That's my call. So, I've been down that road but my curiosity is, because romantically I do like men, appreciate them.
Yeah.
I still can't wrap my head around committing to somebody who happens to be a male. Like I'm like, how do you do that? I'm just so fascinated.
Where in the world, where on this planet do you live?
I live in Alberta, Canada.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not, pro-choice country, be who you are.
Yeah. Okay. My first thought, given that you're already creating the life of your dreams by being child-free. Mm-hmm. You've already given yourself like a blank whiteboard where you're like, it's not just full of children, right? So, correct. Yeah. So with that, I don't think there's any reason that you need to accept any of the other hogwash from society that's not amazing. You already said like a couple things that you're into romantically, a couple things that you're into sexually. There's no reason you can't have all of those things in your life. Mm-hmm. I think I'll tell you a little bit more about my story, but the polyamory thing might work a little like well for you because it does
so far. Yeah.
People. Yeah.
It's just when I think of commitment, because I do, I'm like 75% sure I will never want to get married because I like to live alone. I'm very independent, but that is one area of my life where the door is open. Like children, no, absolutely not. Not even stepchildren, foster, like nothing. Yeah. But when it comes to, because I don't want to say no completely. I mean, Isabel knows very, very well how I feel, but as I get older, I like the idea of getting married. Well, pardon me, I'm more open-minded to the idea of getting married. It's not like I love it, but I'm like, if the perfect situation, but that is a block for me.
Okay.
Is being a straight passing relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So never thought I would end up with a man. And I definitely did not think I was going to end up married. And I was dating all the genders. I was having a summer of free love, basically, the summer that I met my husband. So all the genders were online, etc. I was dating all the genders, etc. I meet him and I tell him, just so you know, I don't think monogamy is a default that I'm interested in doing. I don't think I want to do 100% monogamy forever. Case closed. We never talk about it. I would like to figure out some kind of a little bit non-monogamous, but mostly monogamy in appearance or whatever, in like growing old together and those kind, and health, please give me some health insurance kind of situation. Sorry, I know you have it for free from your government.
Oh, I know, but dental's a big thing and that's not covered. So I'm still for it. I'm still for it.
Dental.
Yes.
So
Dental's big.
Yeah, as an independent consultant, my now husband was like, he has great insurance he works at a big company. I was an independent person. And so he was like, let's get married and you can have my insurance. And like, we already feel like we're going to love each other forever and it's really working. And that we've been, I think, together like 2 years. And I was like, okay, but here's the thing. Like, we're not having a wedding. Doesn't mean we're monogamous. It doesn't mean I'm cleaning your underwear. Like, it doesn't mean all this shit that wives have, like, it's been assumed that it's that. And I don't want to plan it. Like, just tell me where to go and when. And it was City Hall and there were no family notified until afterwards. And so we did it on our own terms. We like created it from scratch. And also I was like, I love living alone. I always want to live alone. I owned my place when I met him. He owned his. We live in separate houses. Except for the pandemic, we did form a pod together. But we have separate, like, I'm here in San Francisco right now, and he's at his home in Sacramento, and they're an hour and a half away. And so we spend lots of overnights together, like the majority of the week for sure. But I travel separately. I mean, we also take couple trips, but it's not like a regular marriage where it's like, once you're married, you two travel always together. I mean, the child-free thing is so liberating because it can cause you to be buck wild and totally free from scratch on all your other things. There's a way in which my queer community history has also like mixed it up. In my marriage, my husband is like, I know that you dating women and flirting with women and being a part of the queer community, like that is a huge piece of you. It's like a horse that needs to run wild. Like if you tried to keep it in a stall, it would eventually just wither away. Like that's what would happen if I tried to like make you a regular wife. And so I'm trying to think like, it's not about him. Like he grew up in as a regular American man. It was the conversations we had together and my awareness of my needs that made him be able to come there. So it's not that I found this miracle person. Like he's my soulmate, blah, blah, blah. Like I love him. But what I love is that I brought myself to the table and my needs, and I saw that he could meet me there. I've had plenty that couldn't meet me there. But like right now we have a huge queer, and as a straight passing person in a straight passing relationship, I have to work really hard to like fly a huge rainbow flag from the front of our house and like, do sort of, we live in a gay neighborhood and like, everyone knows that I identify as a queer person and I'm like out about it because I don't want to be mistaken for straight. It's a personal thing I have. Any listeners are welcome to. It's not a judgment thing about that. It just doesn't feel like the box that I want to be thought of as. What questions does that bring up? I love this dialogue, Lenore.
No, that's super helpful. I'm at that point too where I don't want to be thought of as straight because it's not true. Like I am, and thank you for sharing about your marriage because that really eases my mind in a lot of things. Because again, it's not. Lately, things have occurred where it's like, oh, I could see something developing and I want to be open to it. But that's been a huge block because I am finally able to say out loud, even on my personal Facebook page, regardless of who's watching and who knows and who doesn't know, that I am queer. Do not expect, and so this is, it's daunting. I mean, it's
Yeah.
those that know me it's not a surprise. I've been telling them since high school, like my, but, and even my dad, who again is still part of that cult, but has become a lot more open-minded. He said to me a couple weeks ago, he brought up because we have trans in our family. I have gay cousins on both sides. And he mentioned a couple and how he admired the mom who's my great aunt for supporting them. And he's like, you can support them even if you don't agree. And for me, that was my dad saying, somehow I know about you. It's okay. And I was like, because I'm like, where did this come from? Like, this is, but I realized his wife follows me on Facebook and seen a post I did. So talking with a couple of people, because like, this is not something my like ever thought I would hear my dad say. So I was like, okay, I think that's something. But anyway, no, that does help, because I'm at that point where like, even with my friends who've known me for a long time, who they think I'm having fun. And I think I'm at the point now where that deeply bothers me, because I'm like, yeah, I'm having fun, but it's not, it's more than that. It's not just a drunken experiment at a party. And because I'm so vocal about being child free. And last year it was like talking about being biracial, because that's also a big thing. Now this year it's like, well, let me embrace the fact, like every year I'm like, I've got nothing left. Like, this is the last thing that I hope this, because this is exhausting. Like, this is the last frontier for me to really embrace all of me, so I can be a better advocate for what I feel strongly about. And so that's where I'm at now, where, like you said, and I'm glad you said that, because for me it was like, yeah, light bulb, is that I do not want to be considered straight, because it's not true. And again, like I'm flamboyant, like, you see me in wigs or on the Childfree Girls podcast. I mean, this is me as well. But the thing is it's been very freeing, and it's allowed me just to really embrace all of it, and therefore do things for other people in a deeper level, because I'm like, I don't feel like I'm hiding any part of myself, but it is still, I'm still very uneasy doing this. So this is all helping. Like, this is by next year, I'll be over it.
I love it so much. I don't know. I mean, I am never over it. As I said before, even when I meet a new person, right?
Yeah.
Because as a straight presenting person, I debate like, oh God, as soon as I mention my husband, which I don't even call him, it's like the word thing is nuts. I only call him my husband if I'm talking to straight people who use that language, and it's the only, and like, they wouldn't get it if I was like, sometimes I say my sweetheart and they're like, all they can focus on is like, oh, poor you, you're not married. And I'm like, fuck you and your assumptions. So I use husband when I'm talking to straight people about that, or when I am speaking here specifically to let the viewers here know, like, I am married and it is a man, right? Whereas you mentioned this, Lenora, I only say that I'm the B and LGBTQAI because we're in this conversation right now, and I'm trying to explain that, like, I don't just like one gender, and it's the easiest, like, words are just to convey a thing. And so it's the pathway that a lot of people know. I said it to my parents so they would understand it. But like, in general, I just say I'm queer. But then straight people are like, well, then how could you have a husband? And I'm like, but well, if you're queer includes the B, and B includes having a husband. So. But yeah, the language thing is real tricky. That's why a lot of my friends, and especially the people in my course, from Bi Curious to Bi Confident, they are unlabeled. They're like, I'm just me. I'm just Jess doing Jess. Like, you have known me this whole time. None of this is surprising. Like, yeah. The unlabeled thing is picking up a lot of steam.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to mention, there was what made me think a lot about this a couple of years ago was the actress Anna Paquin, and she's recently had to talk about this again. She was True Blood, star True Blood. Anyway, she came out as bisexual, and she says, like, I've always been bisexual. She's married to a man, her co-star from True Blood. And recently I saw an article how someone had commented to her, oh, well, lucky you, you're a white woman, bisexual, but you have a husband and 2 kids. And she said the comment, oh, so this is a conversation of not being queer enough. And I was like, yes, like, again, what you said too, like, when I read that about her years ago, I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. So I've kind of followed her because I wasn't involved in the child-free community, and I hadn't met other bisexual women who were married to men, because I realized that's something that's really blocked me, because I'm like, how do I talk? Who do I talk to about this? Again, not, and even if I don't get married, which is a good chance, it's just being in a relationship. If it happens to be a man, like, because I know that's like my only boyfriend I've had has said to me, it's like, I'm pretty sure you're a lesbian, because the problem is I did not know how to get past, like, we had fun, don't get me wrong, I was attracted to him, but there's a big part of me that was very stuck. Like, I'm like, how can I enjoy him without, like, I don't want to I've been in the threesome thing. Like, I was involved with a married couple. Like, I've done that. I don't want to bring that into my relationship, but it's hard, like, because I felt like I was denying a big part of myself, and I didn't understand that at the time. So that's been an area of a lot of confusion, which is dissipating. But
oh my God, I love that you're saying, I think it is about figuring out your thing. Like, so for me, I realize I'm happiest when I have like someone who I consider a long-term sweetheart, whether it's marriage or whatever, but like someone who, like, at least our plan is to grow old together, right? I feel very anchored by that. And that anchor, I only love having an anchor if I also have like a kite flying above the anchor. And so for me, the kite is like, I need to be able to have a who knows what's going to happen relationship with women. Like, it's not, I really don't want a girlfriend. I don't have room in my heart for more than one. I guess I'm monogamous in my heart. I mean, I have so much room for friend love and all that stuff and like crushes, but not like, I don't crave having a girlfriend or like a sister wife or any of those things. But I do crave having everything from flirtatious to like makeouts to sex in the queer world. But, and like, I've been trying to figure out like how much I love sharing I love sharing some of that with my husband, and I love doing some of that on my own. And just like, I had to test out things on this experimental world that we're calling my relationship, right? To see what would feel good to me, what would feel like not enough or too much or too close. I also don't want him to have another love girlfriend. Like, I don't want him to have another wife. Like, I want to be his only sweetie growing old together. And it's like, just figuring that out. There's only so much you can figure that out in your head before you get in there and like mess around and do it in person. That's for all of you who are also straight up bi-curious. Like, you can watch all the movies you want, but until you really get in there on a date with a woman, you can't ever like really learn it. And I'm saying this to build confidence, because with men, like, once you learn men, you're like, I'm fine. I could go on any date or sleep with any man. Like, there's some nuances, but like, men are pretty similar. Women, on the other hand, if we're going to do this gender binary thing, women are so unique in terms of how they like to be wooed and flirted with and done in the bed and all that stuff. So, which means even if you're really confident at women, you still are not confident at this one you're on a date with. Like, each individual you're on a date with, each individual queer date, you need to like explore who that person is, which means no one's really ahead of you in terms of dating women. They may have gone on more dates with women, but they haven't gone on more dates with this one woman in front of you. So like, every date, it's a first date for all of us when we're trying to have a queer date. We're all sort of like mystified at who's in front of us.
This is why, Isabel, I don't really want to date women, because it's freaking exhausting. I think Kristen had asked me something once, and I was like, well, sexually, it's easy. Relationship-wise, oh my God.
Oh my God.
So you're bisexual, but hetero-romantic.
I listening to Femily, I'm like, I think it's just because it's easier. I have a ways to go in this department, but oh my God, it's so true. So true.
Oh my God, so funny.
Yeah, so, women, we are a handful, for sure. Yeah.
Plus, our society has taught us how to have emotions. If your society's only taught you to have one emotion, which is anger, which is what men have been told, then they're not going to be that complex once they've done 40 years of just anger and 40 years of not sharing their feelings with their friends. Like we have been fine tuning our feelings with our friends for 50 years, like for as long as we've been alive, right? So we know what makes us tick. We read self-help books. Like society has said to us, you need to read self-help books, talk with your friends. It's totally fine to go to therapy. So of course we are nuanced by now.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you here. I wanted to ask you if there's something else you would like to add to this conversation that we didn't ask. No?
I mean, there's no wrong way to figure out what makes you tick. And there's also no right path. And it's going to have fits and starts. And just like you wouldn't go on a date with one guy and be like, I don't like dudes as a straight person, right? You wouldn't do that like with women. You might have to go on a few. You might have to have like some weird experiences and some major, not really my cup of teas until you figure it out. Just like friends. You can't go on one friend date and be like, I don't think I need friends. Like I didn't like that one person for friendship. We think it has to be, so it's not crystal clear. Like we're all just humans going around. Like there's not really this day when you're like 100% clear on all the things.
Yeah, and that is totally true. You know, it applies to everything, I think. Or even to like straight relationships. You don't go out with a guy. Well, yeah, sometimes you have these red flags, normal.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're like
I'm never dating any men again. You're like, I'm not dating Harold, who was weird on the date again.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, as always, Femily, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming to Childfree Rallies. And to everyone who is here, thank you so much. And to those who are watching the replay, I hope to see you in one of the live rallies because it's a great place to ask the questions live and to interact with us. So I'll be posting about next month's later. So like I said, thanks again, Femily, for being here. It was such a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, I love talking to you. I could talk to you all day. And Lenora, it was so nice to meet you. Oh my gosh, same. Have such a wonderful day. I want to come to a rally in the future. As a guest to listen and talk. Yeah. I mean, not the speaker. Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. I will turn off the recording. Yay.
Oh my God.